Hey guys, I'm Ashley.
And I'm Carlos.
And in case you guys didn't already know, we're planning a trip around the world.
Around the world. If you're keeping track at home, today is video number 3.
And today we are talking all about money. Money. I'm excited to say we've made a lot of progress with our planning in the last week. And we actually made 2 changes to what we went over in our video last week.
We've decided that we're going to have to take off a couple weeks later. So instead of leaving in late March, we'll be taking off in early April. It just worked out better for us work-wise and just getting ready. And then the second big change was that we're cutting Europe out of the trip. Getting rid of those 12 countries is just going to give us more time to hang out in all the other places and really, come into contact with the culture and all that fun stuff. Plus, Europe is just way too expensive. So we'll just have to do Europe in the future.
Yeah. Now, we know that budgeting isn't usually how backpackers go about planning for their trip around the world, but spontaneously just taking off with no regard for your finances or your future is not really our style. So we decided to use our financial expertise, considering we both have finance degrees, and put that to work for our trip. So we're going to explain today the steps we use to make our budget, and then we're going to go over some creative ways that we're actually using to save money before we leave. We think if we plan ahead and do all of our research that we'll actually be able to come home and still have money left in the budget.
Step 1. So the first step in determining your budget is figuring out how much you're willing to spend on this once-in-a-lifetime trip. We know that the experiences that you are going to have are priceless, but the trip is not. The bills don't stop even when you stop working, as we all know.
Sad rule of life.
Yeah. And secondly, you're going to want to figure out what expenses you're going to have running at home even though you're on this trip. This includes anything like a car loan, a mortgage, a cell phone bill, health insurance, anything like that no matter whether you're working or not, you're going to have to pay for. Ashley and I have actually been pretty lucky when it came to that. All we have is our cars and our home. We found a renter. Gotta thank family for that. And we also found somebody to take over the car payments on her lease. Again, gotta thank family for that.
So the next thing you're going to want to do after you figure out how much you can afford to spend on your trip is figure out how many days you actually want to be gone. We plan on being gone about 9 months, which is roughly 275 days. So we're going to show you guys a simple calculation to figure out what your average daily spend, or otherwise we're going to refer to it the rest of the time as ADS, what your ADS can be for your entire trip. The way you calculate your average daily spend, or ADS, is by taking the number that you have chosen that you can spend on your trip, dividing that by the number of days that you plan to be on your trip. And that will give you the average amount of money that you should be spending per day. So for example, if you're saying you're going to spend $20,000 per person on the trip and you're going to spend roughly 275 days, that would give you an average daily spend of about $72.73 per person. Now that means that every country you go to, each day you should be spending roughly $72.73 or less. There's going to be countries that it's higher, but you just need to make sure that you're mixing in those higher ones with a lot more that are lower or right at that number, or else you're definitely going to break the budget.
This ADS figure does not include big ticket expenses such as your flights or bus rides and train rides between countries. This is more of the money you're going to spend while you're at that country. So this is going to cover like accommodations, all your food and beverage spend, your entertainment spend, which includes like tours or attractions like zip lining or something like that, and just miscellaneous other souvenirs. Since we're traveling as a couple, we're fortunate to take advantage of our economies of scale. So where maybe a single backpacker is going to have to pay $17 for a bed in a hostel, we're going to be paying like $24 for a private room at that same hostel.
True. I guess it's good to have you around. It pays to travel in pairs sometimes. So after you figure out your ADS and you figure out all the places that you want to go, the next thing you're going to want to do is try to guesstimate about how long you want to spend in each country. Now, this step is a little hard because you do have to do some research into each place so you can accurately guess how long you want to spend in each place without missing too many of the things you want to see, even though that is pretty much impossible to see everything. You have to prioritize places, look into some of the attractions you want to see, try to plan out a good route so you're not going too out of the way for any place.
Because if you're going to pay for a $200 trip to the Galapagos Islands, you're probably not going to be able to eat dinner for a couple nights.
Real life example. These are the sacrifices we have to make, people. Now, make sure you don't cram too many things into your schedule. That's kind of what led us to eliminating Europe in the first place, because we didn't want to just be seeing all these fantastic places from the window of a bus or a plane. We wanted to be actually there for a good amount of time, so that's why we're trying to spend on average at least around 10 days per country. But it really just depends on what we're doing in that country and where it is on our grand route. So now that you know where you want to go and how long you want to be there, we're going to tell you about a insider secret that we have found to be very helpful in our budget.
Budgetyourtrip.com.
Link in the comment.
And hopefully we can
and it'll be on the screen too, yeah.
So with budgetyourtrip.com, you're able to enter any country that you're looking to spend time in, and then you can also detail whether you want to be spending at a budget rate, a mid-range rate, or a luxury rate. We chose mid-range.
Just to be on the safe side.
Yeah.
Even though we do plan to be more budget-minded in each location and more on a backpacker budget, we wanted to give ourselves a little extra cushiony room so that we can really do the fun stuff while we're there.
Exactly.
It shows what a normal or average expense is for accommodations, for food, for local transportation, for activities. It even goes down to show you what could happen if you get caught in a scam or robbed, or how much souvenirs cost. So it's pretty detailed. It gets updated all the time by regular travelers, and we found that it's probably pretty accurate. If you have a lot of countries like we talked about earlier that have a higher ADS than yours is, you're going to want to limit those countries to very, very few. Especially if a lot of your other countries have an average daily spend that's very close to your amount. In our case, we have some countries that are above our average daily spend, but we also have a lot that are about 50% lower than our average daily spend. So we think we have a good mix to keep us right at the budget that we want to stay at and still be able to do all the things we want to do.
So if you read my About Me in the blog, then you know that I love keeping track of expenses. So it's kind of been my job to keep track of expenses on this trip.
We are keeping a spreadsheet with all of our budget information that we've collected from budgetyourtrip.com, and we're going to put that spreadsheet on our blog for you guys to see, and we're going to keep tracking our expenses as we go on our travels. We're actually going to put a blank template on the blog also so that you can go to budgetyourtrip.com and record all of the average daily spend for each country you're going to go to and have a rough budget for your trip as well. We've already done all the work for you, so you might as well go to the blog and download that spreadsheet and use it. You're welcome.
So make sure you stay connected with us and see if we're staying on budget or not.
So now that you've been able to review what the average daily spend is for all the countries you want to go to, you might have had to go back and eliminate some countries if their ADS was too high for you, or if you had too many countries on your list that had too high of an ADS. Once you've really pared down all the countries that you want to and are able to go to, you can do the final calculation, which would be multiplying the guesstimated amount of days that you want to spend in that country by the average daily spend of that country. Once you've done that for all the countries you plan to go to, you can add all of those numbers together to come out with your final budget. As we mentioned earlier, this number does not include any of your major transportation costs such as flights and buses in between countries, so make sure you leave some wiggle room for that, as transportation can be one of the biggest expenses on your trip. So just make sure you leave room for the cost of transportation. If your entire budget that you can afford is taking up that full amount without your transportation, then you definitely need to go back to the drawing board and leave in some more room for transportation costs, because transportation costs are a huge chunk of your travel money, so bear that in mind. After adding this all up for our entire trip, we actually came in about $7,000 lower than the total amount we figured we would be able to afford for this trip. That's really great news for us, but we have to keep in mind that this money that is left over is also going to be used for the major transportation like flights and buses that we talked about. But after all this, we still think we can come in under budget. Okay, so now that we've explained to you how we developed our budget, we're going to also tell you about some of the creative ways we are saving money for our trip. So there have been several ways that we have attempted to make some extra money before we leave on this trip. A lot of them are really easy things you can do by just downloading an app on your phone or going to an extra website. I'm going to list a lot of them in the comment. It's things like Poshmark, where you can sell your clothes on an app. Ibotta, you get rebates back for the groceries you already buy. There's also other apps and websites like OfferUp, WikiBuy, Ebates, ThreadUp, Declutter. The list is basically endless. You can sell a bunch of junk you don't need, especially since you're probably going to have to do some of that before you leave anyway, if you don't really have a lot of room for all your stuff, or if you're going to be leaving it with a friend or a parent, whatever. Also, something that's really helpful to a lot of people is to download a budgeting app on their phone. Whether it be the Mint app, which tells you where all your expenses are going so that you can keep track of how much you're spending in each different type of budget category, or something like NerdWallet, which gives you advice on all your financial decisions. They're both really cool. There's a lot of other budgeting apps out there where you can just basically keep track of your daily spend before you leave and while you leave. I think we plan on doing something like that to keep track of all our expenses. Besides figuring out ways that we could make money before we leave, we also found a few ways that we could just save money in general from our current budget.
Just looking at where you're spending money currently and just tightening up the belt in certain places. Like, we have decided that we're just not going to spend that much money on restaurants anymore. We're just going to buy groceries, cook ourselves. It works with your own health as well, so it's good for that.
Good for the budget, good for the belly.
Exactly.
It's good for you. It's good for me. It's good for everybody.
I like that. Another good tool we've been using is our credit cards. We've been using a Chase Sapphire card, which offers a lot of different ways to get points, and you can turn those points into cash, which has been pretty nice for us. It gives you 2 times the points on any traveling spend you do. Also, there's no foreign transaction fees, so when we're going around the world and spending money, we're not getting hit with any unnecessary fees that we didn't budget for. So yeah, it's a good card to have on you. There's a lot of different traveling cards out there, but we found the Chase Sapphire one is the better bang for your buck.
Also, remember to always use credit wisely. Do not get a credit card just to put a bunch of money on it and not think of paying for it. That is not the financially responsible thing to do. Make sure if you're going to be using your credit card to pay back on things and earn points for, that you are paying it off every month, because this is the only way that you're actually going to benefit from your credit card. By accumulating interest on it, it is not going to do you anything, because you're just paying extra for things that you're buying, which doesn't make any sense.
I hate that. I hate ATM fees, any stupid little fees.
Anytime
like
you're
that.
paying for your own money is not a good time.
It's not.
So take all of our advice that we've left in this video and make sure you tune in for next week's video, which is going to be all about how we are starting to tie up loose ends in regards to everything at home.
Bye-bye.
See you next time,
Bye.
next Monday. Bye.